This podcast is brought to you by Factor 75 and their delicious, easy-to-make meals. You can directly support Moore's Law is Dead by using offer code FACTOR, SE47647, to get 50% off your first Factor 75 box, plus free wellness shots for life at the link in the description. And you can also support Moore's Law is Dead by going to cdkeyoffer.com, where you can get 25% off all Microsoft software by using the offer code Broken Silicon. We'll talk about these sponsors more later, but for now, let's just get on with the show. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, apparently starting mid-sentence of our guest talking. My mistake there. But let's just get into it. Please introduce yourself, tell people who you are, what you do professionally on the side if you want to tell people, or at a minimum, just what got you into doing YouTube videos.
Yeah, so I'm Vex. What's up? And basically, I started doing tech videos. I've always loved tech, just because it's fun. And I like a lot of my inspiration came from Daniel Owen and like Hardware Unboxed, Gamers Nexus, all those people. And they, it's just like you can just test stuff. And I like to take my content and make like a different spin on it, and bring them like a discussion topic and try to actually take things I test and integrate it into a conversation instead of just testing. There's enough people testing. So that's what I found out.
I'm curious because the two, I don't know where you are, but me, like 5 or 10 years ago, really at this point, like I was just reaching out like on forums and just arguing with people and saying, hey, this doesn't make sense. There actually is no evidence of this working this way. And then usually, sometimes you get really good discussions on Reddit, or not really anymore because I don't know what's happened to it, but it used to be the WCCF Tech comments section. But yeah, now that's turned into something else that's not even a bad conversation, I would argue. But but half of the time I just get these ridiculously shallow, just looking to start a fight comments, and I was like, well, this is kind of becoming a waste of time that I actually spent 30 minutes thinking about replying to this person who put no thought into replying. And it was really like, honestly, it was the videos. There are two things that got me going. Is I remember one thing was like kind of the discussion around Vega and like, will AMD put GDDR6 on it? And that was really my first video. I was just like, no, of course not. Like that is a whole new die they'd have to design. But then also just, God, I don't know if you remember, but in 2018, some of them were not saying this, but I'd say half of the tech tubers out there were like, there's no way the Xbox or PlayStation 5 will have an SSD. And I'm like, of course they will. Or there's no point in another generation. I mean,
they even figured out during COVID. So
yeah, well, and just the level of performance, there were people talking like just ridiculous things. And I'm like, guys, you've got to think. I remember like there was one analysis where they're like, could it be stronger than like a 6670? And I'm like, yes, because give it 2 years, these components will be cheaper, and then they will. I mean, there's no point in another generation. So that type of stuff is what got me to finally just start making really horribly edited and horrible audio quality videos that I uploaded.
Just start talking.
Yeah, because I had, but I'm like, what? I'm wondering if you remember back to like a subject that was like the first thing that made you go, I've got to put it online, and I don't want to do it on Reddit.
Oh, I mean, well, I was never into the forums too much. I like Reddit for just like, you find that Google link and like they just have the perfect answer. That's pretty much how I use Reddit. But I generally speaking, like in terms of tech, like I just wanted to talk about it, and I have nobody to talk about it with. Like nobody is as nerdy as me about this stuff. So
I know
there's always a fun outlet. And I mean, I started talking about it. I mean, I just got into it during Radeon 7000, pretty much. So like I wanted to talk about
HD 7000, you mean?
No, not that old. I'm only 20. I'm only 21, by the way. I think.
Okay.
My first PC, I considered getting one of those cards. Ended up getting a GTX 770 instead for like $100. It was dirt cheap. But,
well, luckily, I co-host every other episode with my brother, so I can talk to him about anything I talk about on my channel. He'll understand and whatever. Cool. And I've got a couple friends that can generally talk to me about this stuff. But I will say, the more I've done this YouTube channel, the issue you bring up of there's no one I have to talk about my personal life who understands it. Well, now that it's my full-time job, I'm even more down the rabbit hole of like, you gotta know a lot actually to get like what I'm talking. I'm sure it's gotten worse for you.
It's hard to talk to people about it. Yeah. They're just like, I don't know what you're talking. You make videos. They're fun. But like I don't know what you're saying.
Like a cousin or aunt of mine, she'll like go, I checked out your podcast. Wow, I didn't realize how good it's doing, but I'm going to be honest, I listened to 10 minutes. I have no idea what you were talking about. Like, it's just another language.
Hey, dude, I have like a fear in my videos too. Like I try to, because I don't even know how much like people that watch the content understand it. You know what I mean? And I try to like explain stuff as much as I can, but I don't want to bog it down with explanation.
You don't want a video that could be 20 minutes to be 30 minutes. Or the people who watch every video, you're like regurgitating the previous 3 videos for those people.
Yeah, it's like, it's a balance. But even with the content, and then like IRL, it's just like, yeah, I never really had too many people to talk to. I have like one friend that's pretty into PCs, pretty nerdy about this stuff too, but he's still not as deep as me. So yeah.
Have you ever had a comment where they'll go like in all caps, you forgot to mention this point when you talked about this thing, and then you're like, no, but like the previous 3 videos I brought up that point multiple times. I didn't in this one because I think it goes without saying at this point.
Yeah. You can never assume too much, man.
Just, that look on your face, you're like, yes, I have seen that.
I've seen that a lot. Yeah. I don't always look at video comments because I don't know. I make kind of controversial stuff, and I know you do it at times too. And
well, it's a balance, right? Because if you never look at them, I've seen some channels do that and just kind of become more and more tunnel visioned in their opinion.
You don't want to forget.
Exactly.
They're there for a reason.
There have been times where it steered me in a direction where I'm like, oh, well, I didn't mean to portray something that way, but if this many people think I mean this, I probably could have made my point better, clearly, or something. And that is constructive sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I like when people are constructive. That definitely helps a lot. Cause like it's like, oh, I definitely missed that. And I'll try to clarify it better in the next video. Or maybe I should actually look more into that. Maybe it's actually important.
XTX999 writes in, and he says, hello, Tom and Vex. It's cool to see Vex finally becoming well-known. The algorithm presented him to me when he started out, and it's not just his growth that's interesting to me. I just think in general that there seems to be a lot of growth with tech channels lately. Daniel Owen, High Yield, or even Moore's Law is Dead, which I'll even jump in here and say the growth in my channel over the past 3 months has been dwarfing the previous 3. So I would say there is something where more channels that aren't millions of subscribers are being recommended more right now. It does seem like it to me. But XTX goes, what do you think is driving this? I don't remember there being this many channels even 3 to 4 years ago.
At least to me, how I see it is I think there's like the side of the tech world that is testing things, and then there's the commentary side of it. And I feel like that's where it's grown lately. Like I'm more commentary, you're more commentary. Daniel Owen does a lot of testing, but he also does a lot of commentary too. So, and he did a different kind of testing where he like puts things side by side, really looks at them
it's usually like testing to test a theory in a specific one, right? Not like trying to review something.
I want to see these things proven. And I just think it's like a new era of like kind of more personal feeling content too, where like people are just talking. I almost feel like it's like a derivative of like streaming to a degree, where it's like you just want to hear a normal person, normal as we are.
We just spent 10 minutes talking about how we're not normal, but normal relatively speaking.
Yeah, so that's where I see it. I think people are I think people just want to see us like explain things, and there's tons of room for it. you still got to be creative. Like I don't think, like for example, like I actually got sent some review samples from. I don't. Do you get review samples?
No, I've never been sent one. I think these companies hate me.
Yeah, it's like I think they don't like you because all the leaks.
I'm sure. Well, the funny thing, it's their marketing though, but the marketing isn't in the marketing teams are in charge of sending the samples because the engineers are always really friendly though. So I don't think they care. It's the marketing teams that are mad.
Yeah, yeah. They don't want things out before they want it out. And I know Nvidia too. They can be a little iffy sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I got review samples. Like I did reviews on the super cards, and like I know it almost felt bad because of how much time I spent on reviews. Like insane amounts of time. Like seriously, like 10, 12-hour days for like a week straight.
It's a ton of work. It really is.
Yeah, and I always try to get footage of everything and then put side by sides up so you can see them in action. And then I put up the video and I'm just like, I don't know if it's also because people weren't as interested about those cards. I don't think they were that exciting. But also just like I put in all that work and it's like I get like a quarter of the views of the bigger channels. It's just like people don't need to see it. So it's like
I make myself do a review like once or twice a year just to make sure I've tested it. Like I spend all this time talking about Lovelace, but I haven't actually tried it.
Nobody's
I feel like I'm full of shit.
Do you actually know what you're talking about?
I need to make sure what I have an opinion about makes any sense. Remind myself how much work goes into a review. But I only do it like once or twice a year for a reason.
Yeah, they're insane. I actually, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. It's still really cool to test it. It's actually insane. I think people do overlook how much is into that. Like I look at like Gamers Nexus hardware and box reviews. I'm like, holy crap! I know how long that took. And they just do graphs too, so like that's even a little bit faster. But it's like, holy crap.
The look on their face, by the way, because like of course I've had Steve from Hardware Unboxed on the podcast a few times, and I love like finding one question that I know will make him make a mad face. Like, Steve, why didn't you just do this one extra thing in your review? And he's like, I know. He's like,
double the time of everything.
I spent a week. That's why we didn't do that last thing.
Yeah. It's like, just go back and retest everything real quick. It's not a big deal.
But you know, I think one reason a lot of channels like yours might be growing right now is I think people are, especially in a time where it seems like there's a lot of a debate to be had about value right now, about what's worth spending your money on, that people are getting more and more hungry for opinions because no one's giving them. And I won't single anyone out. I think actually a lot of the biggest channels, some of the people we're mentioning, do have them a lot of the time. Yeah. But a lot of the biggest reviewers don't have an opinion. All of the reviews, I don't know how you can test a card. Yeah. It loses to the competition, costs more than the competition, has some issue. And then you're like, but I think it makes sense for these people. Like where are the reviews where they say this sucks?
Yeah. I think as channels, like I feel like around our size, like we can kind of chill out. Like we don't really, we're not like forced to think a certain way or anything like that. Whereas the bigger you get is like we're just talking about people getting pissed off in the comments. I mean, I can't imagine if you start flipping one side, how many people you alienate in your audience. I would like, I'm trying to think like bigger channels, like say like LTT or something. They're usually not too strong on opinions. They give you the facts as much as they can. I think LTT has, at least in terms of graphics cards, has kind of shifted more towards the value. And I think Linus himself has been kind of annoyed by Nvidia lately. So, but I think people do want to see that value though, because it's like, it's at this point where there's so many features. Like, I'm just talking about graphics cards, but like on Nvidia's side, there's all these features you have to weigh, and like only really people that have access to the cards can tell you if they're worth it or not. And so like you're talking about DLSS or frame generation or whatever. I think people want to actually see that, and I even try to test some stuff in my videos with like production stuff too, because surprisingly, I use like AMD cards all the time for production, and they work great. So, like, it's interesting to see how much stuff actually matters, and answering those questions for people, and see if you would care if you're in that position. So,
Well, that's why I also make myself test cards every now and then too, because I mean, the way some people talk about AMD or even Nvidia sometimes, like, well, it just doesn't work and it can't do this. And then I like, throw 7900 XTX into my side system here and mess with it for a week. And I'm like, the thing works fine. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. The software is fine. It renders videos fine. There's no, like, the way some people talk about like software advantages for some of these companies, I think more needs to be, it needs to be just emphasized more and more. Like, you really can't tell the difference half the time. Like, they both work pretty well, generally speaking. XTX 999 writes in again and says, a little over half a year ago, Vex made a video where he switched to a 6800 XT. At the time, I found it pretty cool considering I switched to the XTX within a month of this video, because I was noticing that reviewers had no problem saying something, but then never putting their money where their mouth was. So actually seeing someone online say they liked something and then use it was a breath of fresh air. I'm curious what the definitive reason was that made you switch to the 6800 XT at that time.
I mean, I remember I had this like curiosity in me where a year before, like before I got into content and stuff, I had a GTX 1070, right? And I wanted to upgrade my card. And cards were starting to come down on the used market. I saw 3080s were going for about 550. And actually, I think 6800 XTs were going for 600. They're actually going for more. I don't know, maybe VRAM. I don't know. I don't think people were ahead of that at that point in time. But I ended up going with Nvidia because I was like, I want to try out ray tracing and I want to try out DLSS. I want to try this stuff. And now there's actually people that answer these questions for you. But and then I tried it and I was like, I don't even turn on ray tracing. And DLSS, my games usually aren't that demanding. I need upscaling. So I ended up like a situation that's like, I kind of wish I just got the 6800 XT. So I went back and I tried it. And right now, I actually ended up getting a review sample of a 7800 XT, and that's basically the same card. So I have that one here, but actually my friend has the 6800 XT right now. And he likes it. So, but yeah, it was just a curiosity thing. And I had built up a little bit of money from YouTube, and I was just like, I'll try it. So.
Well, no, it's funny too, because, and I think when people talk about value and price performance and like how things have changed over the past few years, they like forget where we were at each exact year they're talking about. Like, I remember testing a 6800 XT around when it came out. And of course, what does that mean? Most of the cards were way overpriced. There's massive gouging by AIBs. Yeah. But, the funny thing is you could still generally get a 6800 XT and 2021 for around $800 to $1,200, and that is almost what like 3070s were going for, and the 3080s
entire tier up.
Like the 3080s were going for like 1,500, and people talk about them like they always cost the same price. They didn't. Usually the 3080 costs more. And I remember in my review going, I'm testing this 3070, I'm testing the 6800 XT. I will say, and I was, by the way, very critical of DLSS when it first came out. I thought it was a joke, just the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. But I was like, half of these games I'm testing right now, DLSS works. I can tell it looks good, and it is a real benefit. But the fact of the matter is, the 6800 XT is like the price of what you can get a 3070 for half the time. Like, whatever, don't turn on DLSS. It's still faster than the 3070 with DLSS. And then things have changed since then, kind of. But like, that's just one example, of how I think people talk about these NVIDIA features and they say this is like really important to have. But then they forget that half of the time you can get a 6600 for the same price as a 3050. So like, even if you don't even use FSR, like it's still getting higher frame rates.
Yeah, that's generally how I feel about it too. I mean, I do like DLSS a lot, and if the cards are about the same price, I would maybe pay more for an NVIDIA card. It is like, it genuinely looks better, and if you're playing those really demanding games, performance baseline, I agree with you. Like, I feel like NVIDIA kind of prices their cards that like they're counting like DLSS as like basically free performance. And
I agree. Yeah, I think they are.
so they're like, but it's like a 4070 versus a 7800 XT. They're around the same price. You just get a 4070, but you get like another 30% performance because you turn on DLSS. But AMD's FSR, it isn't there. So
yeah. And I want to steer this conversation. Let's go here, just how you generally see the state of GPU competition right now. Like, how would you frame? Because, like, Nvidia's doing well. I would say they're not selling as well as they did though last gen. Although last gen was not a normal generation. Radeon sales are up, but I think a lot of people are disappointed AMD isn't more aggressive. I'm just wondering how you see things right now.
Right now, my biggest disappointment is that AMD is competitive, but only in one price point. And it's like around 400 to 600. The 7900 XT is pretty good at 700, but I kind of would want to pay for DLSS when I'm paying for a $700 card. I'm not gonna lie, you're paying that much, but like that is a good card and I like it too. But it's like all the competition is like right there. But then you drop down in the market is like, I really do wish AMD was a little bit more competitive. I think they're also focusing like hard into AI right now, and they're also like they're not producing chips yet, but they might be doing all of their like research development, securing fab capacity for AI chips, and they're not really thinking about this. So, I mean, at the moment, I wish there was like a $300 card. Honestly, a $200 card from new gen that was pretty good. Like if we had a 7600 at $200, that would be a really good card. But they're fighting with themselves at that point too. So I don't know. I wish we had more competition where it actually matters. But.
So QH Freddy writes in and he says, why do you think AMD never goes for the jugular in the GPU market? And my answer is, and I don't know if you remember these eras, but like, I'd say 15 years ago, they did twice with like you could argue they kind of did with like 3870 and how they priced some of those older gens, but like the 5870 and the 4870, those two especially, they like basically gave you the same performance as Nvidia for a third of the price, a third less to half the price, and it got them to like 60% market share. But Nvidia was making double the profits with 40% market share, and eventually they just outspent them. And so, I mean, my personal answer is they did try twice. It didn't get them anywhere. And the fact of the matter is, God, there's just so much they could spending money on. So many things they could be spending money on right now that they couldn't before. Like AMD before wasn't making APUs. AMD before wasn't worried about an AI boom. AMD before, I guess, was in consoles, but they were practically just buying off the shelf GPUs and putting them in there. Like it's not like now where like, God, the money you could spend on one thing to go, like, it's kind of like you're asking, there's a comically big, by the way,
half go.
Think about it there. But it's like you would advise AMD, hey, you're making more money right now than you did last year in GPU, but what you should do now is get into this like grind fest attritional war with GeForce instead of spending $1 in AI that will make back $10 right now. And I just think that's why.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, Nvidia's in that same spot. They're just like, why would we compete here? Which is a shame because obviously gaming is still big. People care about it. People want to give good value stuff. But like, why are you fighting for lower margins on your products? There's no point. And then I don't know if AMD's in this position because if people with like, if their GPUs like don't sell on the lower end, on the budget side, they honestly, I mean, they sell the stuff in the consoles. So it's like, are they still winning? I don't even know there.
Yeah, well, and I think AMD wants to go for it potentially, but I don't think they see a point in doing it unless they know it's a bona fide home run, because I think they've tried to in the past, and if you mess up, you wasted so much money. And there's definitely a critique here that they're playing it safe. But I also think that I don't like mean to defend AMD here, but I just think that that you have to point out, like, why would they do it if it really backfired on them so hard before when they tried?
I mean, yeah, I agree. It is high risk and low reward. I mean, it's still a lot of money, but I don't know why they would. I mean, right now Intel is doing that with Arc.
Yes, and if we look at their earnings,
yeah, they're pretty low.
It's going great,
I don't know. They're got to be so far in the hole with Arc right now. Hopefully, at some point they got to start getting margins too. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. Actually, someone I talked to at Nvidia, I asked this person. I probably brought this up before on the channel, but I said, "What?" I never ask you. I just want to know what Blackwell is or something about the Switch. But I'm just curious. What do you think about Intel AXG? And the person went, they bet the farm on graphics cards when they should have bet the farm on AI. And I don't know what they're going to do about that.
Man, yeah. I'm curious. So the GPU market isn't that great, but I'm curious with what Intel is going to do with their fabrication kind of stuff, because apparently they're gonna possibly be making stuff for Nvidia, and they wanted to make. They said they're interested in making stuff for AMD too. It's like it.
Well, I didn't even say the second half of what that Nvidia person said. I should say it.
Okay.
So far, 2024 is off to a very busy start, with me finding myself working long nights repeatedly every week to keep up with the news. And personally, I would usually love to cook. I find it fun, relaxing, but lately I just haven't always had the time nor the energy to do so every evening, and well, that's where Factor enters the equation. This piece of content is sponsored by Factor. Factor is a meal delivery service that makes meeting your nutritional goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals right to your doorstep every week. And every meal is created with quality and sustainable ingredients that taste great, with over 27 different meals, 33 different add-on options, and the ability to tweak your plan further. So anyone, whether you're keto, calorie conscious, vegan, gluten-free, doesn't matter. Anyone can be happy with their delicious delivery service. I tried it. I really did like it. It genuinely tastes great. And even if you use the oven, which I do because I prefer that over using a microwave, it takes 10 minutes or less. A microwave, it's like 5 minutes. Every meal takes the same amount of time, which is almost no time. And yeah, support Moore's Law is Dead by heading to factor75.com at the link below to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus 2 free wellness shots for the remainder of your subscription's life. As long as you keep it active, you will continue to get free wellness shots. And by the way, signing up through that link in the description directly helps the channel. And I genuinely do like their meals and recommend them. Check out factor75.com today. The person then said, I think Intel's going to have to spend the next 10 years figuring out how they're going to become a fabless company and compete with TSMC more so than create designs. Or I shouldn't say fabless, really the opposite, a fab first company. And so this person suggested to me too, they bet the farm on the wrong thing 3 times in a row. They didn't make smartphone chips when they needed to. They didn't make tablet chips when they needed to. Then they bet everything on graphics cards when they should have done that 5 years before the mining boom. And now they've missed the AI boom. It's like they're always time. And this person goes, they're going to have to, as quickly as possible, become a TSMC competitor, because I don't know how they get the money to compete in design anymore.
Yeah, I mean that's really the only. I think the most secure way forward is to they need chips. We make their chips. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're always going to have business if other people are doing the innovation for them, basically. So.
Right. The problem I have, though, is again, I keep bringing up people I talked to at NVIDIA. Someone at NVIDIA also told me, we'd love to make chiplets for their APUs. Wouldn't it be great if Arrow Lake came with an NVIDIA tile instead of Battle Beige or something? And I went, yeah, it'd make me much more likely to buy it, actually, if I'm being honest here. What an awesome laptop that'd be. But then the person said, but we're not doing that unless they kill AXG, because we know they'll just steal our stuff there. So that's the big chicken and egg issue right now is, unless, from my point of view, unless there was some big war in Taiwan, and so they had to go to Intel. I mean, the second that happens, snap your fingers, NVIDIA is making chips at Intel in America. That's what will happen. But until they need to do that, I keep hearing that people are scared Intel will like steal their stuff. You know,
I mean, I would have that fear too if I were them. It's like I think Intel has come out publicly and said that even though they're making the chips, their foundry and their chip or designers or whatever, they're completely separate. It's like,
yeah, but aren't those?
Really?
Isn't that a person that used to work at the other part of the company who probably still goes to lunch with the other people at the company?
Yeah, they don't talk about that,
right? Like
there'd be something that's sneaking. You know it.
Yeah, for me, I would go, okay, Intel, we hear you, we see you, but we're going to give this 5 years to actually feel like a separate company, and then we'll consider it. And that's my major concern I have about Intel right now. It's like, what do they do in the next 5 years? You know, like, because they need to get to a point where everyone trusts them to make their chips, and frankly, get to that point in a time where there's shortages. Because even if Intel is 10% better and 10% cheaper than TSMC, wouldn't you still consider TSMC just because you know they made your last 10 lineups of graphics cards, so you know they're going to execute on time? Like it's a risk.
I mean, it's like when Nvidia went with Samsung.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't very I mean, they swapped right off of Samsung. They're like, we're going back to TSMC.
Oh, and
so
I mean, anytime I bring up Samsung, I'm like laughed out of a room. Like I'm like, hey, would you guys consider making the lower half of Blackwell at Samsung or something? And they're just like, no, we're never doing that again. Like they don't regret going to Samsung because from their perspective, they propped up a competitor to TSMC and they proved to TSMC that they don't have to use them. And they got those wafers for so cheap from what I've heard.
Probably, yeah. I mean,
but I don't think they want to do it again.
Yeah, they just jacked up the power to to stay competitive and stuff. So I'm hoping we get I'm hoping we get some stuff in the Intel Foundry stuff going, but I don't know either. I also I don't know, there's a part of me too that to have stuff in America, maybe I'm a little nationalist or whatever, but that's kind of cool.
Well,
at the same time,
hey, I'm an American, got a flag outside too, but so it does appeal to me. But I will say this as well. I think anyone who isn't literally in Taiwan though should maybe it would be good for diversification if some of our stuff was made not just in America, maybe in Europe as well, just so that if something, I mean, what if an earthquake happened or something, you know, like it's really putting your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Well, I think TSMC, I think they're building stuff in Japan too.
Mm-hmm.
So
I believe it's older node stuff, but that would help with making your Alexa, I guess.
Just in case, you know.
Yeah.
Those Alexas. Who else is going to listen to us?
let me push the conversation back in this direction, though.
Yeah.
Swiggles writes in and he says, hey, guys, I believe a contributing factor to the elaborate RDNA 4 top die being canceled, which, of course, was something heavily discussed like, I don't know, half a year ago, that RDNA 4 is mid-range only. He says, was because AMD still does not provide equivalent premium features. DLSS, frame gen, ray reconstruction are far from perfect, but they're there. And if you want a premium product, you probably want premium features. AMD is chasing these features. It's just, it feels like when they chase, they're contributing to their perception and reality of having market dominance. Do you think they will take this time, not having a high-end GPU late this year, I guess not a true high-end GPU this year, to make their own headline-grabbing and interesting features instead of just making FSR ray reconstruction? Or do you think that they won't really be able to do, like, because I think, you know, I'm curious what you think about this idea, because it's a theory I've had as well for a while of like, there's a bunch of reasons why AMD wouldn't want to spend all this money making some like 20 chiplet insane thing for gaming for $2,000. But I also think a major part of it is just the perception of like, if you know your chip's going to cost this much to make, then that would mean your chip has to have all these other premium features, or no one in the high end is going to buy it anyways. I'm wondering if you agree with that. That's probably a factor in what feature AMD could maybe work on that would be headline grabbing, because they used to do some new stuff first, like they really did.
Yeah, I haven't seen them do anything new in a while though. AFMF was the last thing, and it's okay. I mean, sometimes, but I mean, I'm I'm not sure if it would give them more time to work on it, because I'm just thinking like their hardware designers and their software teams are probably completely separate. I don't think it would change the unless they have like a budget constraint or something like that, and they would hire.
Or they need time to finish some headline grabbing feature that just wouldn't be ready this year, maybe.
Yeah, to me, like I have no clue what else they would innovate on. Personally, I see why they kind of feels like they kind of copy Nvidia, because like in terms of like rendering out games, if they were to change that, I mean, I think ray tracing is probably the future. How do we get there? It's gonna take a while, like a long while. But like, would they just make ray tracing better on their cards? I would like them to. I would like some AI upscaling in there, so that's not a factor. But that's just copying Nvidia. So I don't know what they could innovate on, but I do think it would give them hopefully some time to work on their lower end cards. Because honestly, like some of the most memorable AMD generations, to me at least, I'm a little bit younger, so the like 5000 series was cool. I really like the RX 480, 580. Those are good cards. And when they targeted the lower end, those are great. So those are some of my favorite AMD generations. So if they do that again, even if they just go for performance, they can't exactly make like a really competitive feature. Unless they're thinking of something I'm not thinking of. I mean, they're probably really good engineers, but I don't see what else they would do right now, personally.
No, I tend to agree. Like just thinking to myself till you were talking there, like I can't think of what. I'm sure there's something I didn't think of DLSS. So you know, I'm sure they can think their job is to come up with this stuff. So I'm sure there's some stuff they could work on. Like specifically, I would imagine like when you look at like smart access memory, it's probably the closest thing you can think of. And now Nvidia has their rebar support, so they definitely push something forward with that.
Same was cool.
I'm guessing with like how much work they're putting into like new versions of Infinity Fabric APUs, there's probably some new latency stuff. Maybe they could come up with that would be specific to them and like a new feature.
That would be cool.
But that's all I can come up with.
Yeah, I think that could be some AMD could innovate on. I'm not sure where else there is still way to make room for latency in the pipeline. I've seen some stuff on that with the. I'd love for them to really make anti-lag plus like not ban you from games. That would be awesome.
That'd be an improvement.
Still waiting on that. I think they are working on that right now, but that's kind of just reflex too. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just not creative enough to think of it, but I don't know what they would do.
I think the only thing AMD really can do right now, unfortunately for everyone listening, is copy NVIDIA, but actually do it. Like they need to get to an AI accelerated version of FSR, which I imagine they were working on. But like, I don't know, the way I hear it basically is like RDNA 3, 3.5, 4. 3.5 is better than 3. 4 is better than 3.5. But they're not like fundamentally like a new way of doing anything. It's just fixed or better. Like I think RDNA 5 is going to be where like the way they do ray tracing is fundamentally different finally or something. I think 4 may have some avenues for like AMX stuff. I don't know. But like I think 5 is when they're really going for it. And so I would argue that like until they can do it all, at least 99% as well as NVIDIA, the only real avenue for growth is to just, it's got to be polished, good price performance. And unfortunately, we're in this situation, I feel like, where unlike 10 years ago, I feel like there were some cards from AMD that were like half the price of NVIDIA and yet no one bought them. I don't think that happens anymore. I think if AMD offers a better product, people buy it, but they're still more stuck right now than they were 20 years ago. They have to be cheaper though. And I don't see a way for them to do it until then. So it's like
you're always compromising. So
people aren't ignoring them, but also people really do expect them to be cheaper now in a way I don't think they did even 20 years ago.
I would think that they would just copy right now. I don't know what the other best avenue would be, because I mean, people just want to buy a graphics card that is cheaper but doesn't have any compromises. And I don't know what else people would want. Because even if they do like another feature, that feature has to be so good that you don't want DLSS.
Mm.
And it's like,
and is that
that
feature really going to
happen?
matter unless you've made FSR as good as DLSS first? Because otherwise,
Yeah.
you're just like, well, we have this and they have that. But NVIDIA is going to advertise theirs more. You have to make yours as good as theirs
Yeah.
and then have another thing. Because otherwise, it's just one versus the other.
Yeah. Because right now on their end, I mean, what in terms of like actually like, you know, upping performance or upping the smoothness of games with frame generation. I mean, what we've done up to this point is just like change the ways that how many pixels we render, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, how many other ways can we change the amount of pixels we render in a game? I think we're running out of ways. It's like either we upscale or we duplicate frames. And then I can't think of anything else. Maybe there's an insane rendering pipeline that could reuse physics that they already, not physics, but like, you know, lighting techniques that they already used in a frame. That's probably AI based at that point.
The
That's
one thing
almost
I think I
but-
can come up with right now is, and I'm sure it's something NVIDIA is working on. So AMD, it would behoove them to do this before NVIDIA so it doesn't look even worse. Is I think right now the way frame doubling works is you basically have to double the frame. Like I can't on a 120 hertz display double the frame unless I'm just throwing torn frames everywhere. Unless I actually render it at 60 frames, which has worse input lag than 120. So the holy grail would be is if AMD before NVIDIA could have a situation where every time it dips from like 120 to 100, you sneak in 20 generated frames, but you don't have to natively render at 60. That's the holy grail. You do that, I'll start using frame generation like that. And that'd be so useful on console as well, by the way, where it dips from 60 to 50 all the time now. It doesn't. It's always, at least visually, a locked 60. The input lag thing would still be there, but I think...
well, you would be playing on a controller too. It'd feel a little smoother on console.
So I mean, if AMD can do that before NVIDIA, that'd
be cool.
That's what we want, frankly. We don't want to have to render at 60 to look like 120 and use less energy. We want it to always be at 120 and then stop the frame drops ever happening. And so you don't really feel them anymore. And that'd be one hell of a selling point.
Yeah, that'd basically be like dynamic resolution scaling, but frame generation. Wait, and that means that like, you never dynamic get a dip in quality. Yeah, that's already the name.
Yeah.
DFG. There it is.
No, yeah, you wouldn't ever get that. You'd have highest quality when you can have it. And again, I'm just saying this. I've literally been told this by people at NVIDIA. What they want to get to within 10 years is a situation where it doesn't matter what you have. Is it a 6090, a 6070, a 6050? What you do is you tell it what the resolution is natively, what your monitor's max resolution is, what your monitor's max frame rate is, and then it dynamically adjusts DLSS resolution and frame gen to make it always fill up your monitor. And if you have a 6090, more of the frames are real, you're at a higher level of DLSS, but it's dynamically always adjusting all of this, and you don't have to click a thing. That's their goal. And if they got there before AMD even had ray reconstruction, that would be a problem, because then you are getting into that argument where you're like, it is just worth more.
That is a really interesting idea, though. To me, that does sound like where it would probably end up being. It'd almost be like a PC would almost be like a console at that point, whereas like you just are targeting a frame rate, and whatever you have to do to get there is what it is. Because like a lot of console games run at like ultra performance scaling or whatever. And yeah, I actually like that idea. As long as it doesn't feel like garbage, and
it's only doing it when it needs to. It's not forcing me to use the lower quality at all times.
Yeah, I wonder how integrated it'd have to be in games, or if it'd be just because I could almost see like a game like taking your GPU, right, your monitor, your refresh rate, and then doing a quick benchmark pass to find out what settings you can achieve, and then how much scaling and frame generation, or the dynamic frame generation, it would need to, average out the FPS at, I don't know, like 120, 144, whatever. That'd be nuts.
Hey, that's,
That'd
I
be
mean,
really cool. I think console players will like it too. So,
well, and that's the thing is that it would definitely go to consoles as well. It'd make every developer's life easier. And then once you had that, the arguments kind of would have to stop. You would just have to say, well, now the GPU is getting stronger. We can't trick you anymore. Like the GPUs just have to get stronger for better performance moving forward.
Yeah, I've actually seen people talk about, I don't know if you know who Asmongold is.
No.
But okay. But do you know Starforge Systems, the PC builders?
Yes.
Okay, so like he's like one of the owners on it, and I've seen him talk about it. He wants to get like prices of PCs down, like so it's like $1,000 you get a really high quality PC. I know I've seen him talk about it, and I've probably other people have talked about this too. Is like he's like, if there's just another thing like frame generation or DLSS, he doesn't fully understand it, but if we just get something else that just gives us more frames, then we can get $1,000 PC. And it's like,
well, yeah, it's more performance.
I don't think they can trick us anymore, though. Yeah. I think we're running out of tricks. It's how do we make this tricks like streamlined, and that they don't like, especially with frame generation. They already do a lot to minimize latency, but get that latency as low as we possibly can, so it doesn't feel. It would kind of feel weird with the dynamic stuff because your latency would change like randomly in the game. Depends,
but it would have happened
how
anyways.
much you'd have to do it.
But it would have happened anyways. You know,
that is true.
And you could even have a toggle like, do you want us to smooth out your frames more so by dropping DLSS quality, resolution quality, or do you want us to just sneak in more frames? And if you're someone that doesn't notice the latency as much, you could just say, I've always been fine dropping from 60 to 50, but I want to keep it at 4K. It'd just be that type of a decision.
Yeah, it's a cool idea.
QH Freddy writes in and says, what do you think are the least polished parts of each of NVIDIA and AMD's GPU experiences?
Ooh. Well, I would have said NVIDIA's software on their side, but they just released the app, and the app is pretty good. I've been messing around with it. It's still a little rough around the edges, but it is a lot better than. I mean, they haven't even integrated all the features of Control Panel in it yet, but they will be, and it feels a lot better. So I would have said that. I'm not sure on other sides of NVIDIA, and on the AMD side, I think the I mean, obviously, I think it's just the upscaling, all that kind of stuff. I really wish they had a nice latency competitor reflex, but AMD software has been great for a while. I think some of my videos that I've done trying out those AMD cards, a lot of people were like, "Oh, so the software is not bad. It's actually really nice." Okay. So, I mean, it's kind of like opposite sides. Like NVIDIA has had very good integration into games and features like that, and then AMD's had nice interfaces for their software. And also, like, if AMD could integrate into more programs too, there's still some things like I know I have friends that do stuff with like AI on their cards. AMD's not even close really in that performance. So, and if I use it for like neural stuff in DaVinci Resolve, I don't know if you use Resolve, but yeah, it struggles a little bit more there. So a little bit stuff like that. AMD's very focused on gaming right now. Yeah, and I like their driver support's good. Their software's nice. That's what I would say. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I'm still gonna say, I'm still going to say the same thing for NVIDIA, though, until they have every feature in the new app and it's tested. I really still have the complaint, and they still lack some integrated overclocking software, which, I mean, AMD's actually, I'm surprised every time I try it. It works pretty dang well now. I never need to download Afterburner, and you can just, I mean, I sent my brother, because he has a 7900 XTX, but I tested it here first for a video, then sent it to him. And I had a Wattman profile that I could send to him first. And he's like, he tried it with and without. And he's like, this is a different card. Like, it's undervolted and it has its power limits raised. But because I'm gaming with a capped frame rate, because it's undervolted, even with a higher max TDP, it's actually usually putting out less heat because it's capped. And he said there were sections where he was using like 20% less energy and getting 20% more performance. And it's the fact that I can do that without having to download Afterburner. And actually, they included like auto overclock actually kind of works, which surprises me. And that's just a free 5-10% right there. And it's a real free 5-10%. It's not you downloaded Afterburner and spent a day testing it. It's like you pressed a button and it worked. So I don't know. That type of thing, I think NVIDIA, like we talked about software parity. AMD needs to catch up to NVIDIA and DLSS, but I'm sorry, NVIDIA does need to catch up. Why don't they have an answer to chill, like Radeon Chill as well? It's like fantastic way to cap your frame rate that like does the minimal stuff to waste energy and improve latency. I find it odd actually NVIDIA doesn't have that.
You almost make me want to do a video on it testing it. I haven't tried the auto overclocking. I have overclocked a lot in the software and I was like, yeah, this is nice. I always have to do Afterburner on NVIDIA cards. And sometimes Afterburner has certain
issues,
parameters you can do, and sometimes you can't do them. And AMD is just always good. So I completely agree there. I actually completely forgot about the overclocking because I haven't overclocked in a while. I've just been testing stuff stock. And just, I agree. That's great. NVIDIA does need to catch up there. They have like a little something. What, can you like up the fan speed and up the, I think you can up the power limit?
Here's the funny thing is I don't know because I just always use Afterburner anyways. So I don't even remember if it's in there. And if it is, it's hard to find and in some odd, obtuse menu. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I think you can like up the power limit, but that's it. And it should boost there, but then it's going to use more power too. A lot of the cards that have been coming out have been extremely quiet. I don't know if you've messed around with some newer cards.
Oh, yeah. I try to point that out to people now. Like, actually, let me, like, which I think this is a good place to go to with the conversation, too. I wanted to touch on this next. But, like, people talk about, for example, how much more expensive graphics cards have gotten.
But then they're huge.
Well, and then here's like a 4060. This is a pretty typically sized card, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe this was before your time, but I had a 7970. That was like a high end card, which at the time had 3 gigabytes, and it was like this big. That was like a $500 card, which in today's high end would be like 800. And I mean, the cooler was probably lower quality than this 4060. I mean, I do think that it's worth pointing out that, like, God, people got to look up like old 6670s and, like, you know, how GTS 450s. I mean, like, even the 750 Ti, a lot of the launch models of that just look like they glued a heatsink to a board. There's nothing on it. It's just all exposed wires. They're like, here you go. You know, I think on the one hand, I think first of all, we need to acknowledge how much nicer cards look right now. But on the other hand, we need to also say, well, not all of them need to look that nice. Like, maybe people would prefer a 4060 that looks like the 750 Ti and cost $100 less. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that to some degree. I was even pointing out just because I would worry about like undervolting cards and stuff a whole lot, like with a 3080. But then I got these other cards, like, man, they're so quiet because I don't like noise on my system. I don't know about you. And they're just so high quality now. Like, I got a 79.
They weren't quiet before.
No, they weren't quiet.
They were all blower coolers. Even like the GTX 480. It was like a 350 watt card with a blower cooler. It's just like, the whole time.
And it ran hot.
Yeah, and it was running at 90 degrees Celsius, like breaking power supplies. And I mean, to say whatever you want now, but the cards, even the cheap ones, are so much quieter. It's stupid.
Yeah, for how little of a cut these AMBs are getting, they're making good cards. They may not be like the most creative things all the time, but yeah, they're nice.
It's usually, here's like a microwave-sized heatsink there. It's quiet.
Yep, it is very quiet though. Yeah, my 7900 XT runs at like 50 degrees on my open air bench, and it's just like, sometimes the fans turn off while it's gaming, like even full tilt, it'll just turn off. I'm like, what the heck is happening? No coil line. It's great.
QH Freddy writes in, he says, do you think other GPUs could follow the same trend as the Golden Rabbit edition of the 7900, using a less aggressive power and clock envelope, sticking to cheaper bins of memory, cheaper coolers, cheaper boards and packaging? Do you think NVIDIA and AMD may realize that pushing every single die to the power wall may not be the best way to segment their product lines? Or do you think that the AI hardware demand will put a premium on die area and force them to squeeze the maximum performance out of each die? Yeah, that's actually a really good point too, is like pushing things to the limit makes sense if you can't make enough cards. But if you make too many cards, it might actually just be cheaper to put a more expensive die on a way cheaper board.
Yeah. Because the 7900 GRE has so many more compute units than the 7800 XT, but it performs like the same.
But it fits, it literally is compatible with the same boards, which means it can use the same capacitors and power components and everything, coolers. And that does actually save like $50 right there sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to design anything else too. It's another big thing. And then they can mass produce those boards. I feel like they would probably start looking at it as like, oh, we have 80 compute units on here. It's like, could we use this a little bit better? Can we use this on AI maybe?
Well, but in 2021, that's what they probably would have said, you know, when they're pushing out 3070 Ti's that use 300 watts for $800. But I mean, if people weren't desperate to get GPUs, they would have never gotten away with that.
Yeah. I might have missed part of the question. I'm trying to think of what else you said. I was trying to basically find it.
You know, basically his point just is, do you think maybe they're starting to realize that, like, here's an example I would give. The 4070, if it didn't have that absurd Founders Edition cooler, it's so high quality. Like, if they would have just used an 8-pin, a cheaper like, I mean, this is a card that could use a blower and not even be loud, and just made it like $500 when it came out, but it's 10% weaker. I think that's what many more people actually wanted.
Yeah, I think people prefer the prices too. Maybe they're trying to make it look like a premium brand or something like that. Like I have one over here. I had to start doing the Gamers Nexus thing and leave the connector in there because I hate these things. But yeah, these cards are way too nice for what they are. All metal. They're whisper quiet.
They feel very premium, but if they could remove $100 from the cost,
yeah,
I mean, and it could have launched at $500. I just think that's what more people want. Look, in a time of shortages, sure, push it as hard as you can because you can't make a lot of them, but that's just not where we're at anymore.
I mean, I completely agree. I because I see the coolers we're getting too, and I'm just like, how are the coolers so big? Because I know that costs a lot of money.
Well, I think they intended to push them much harder than they did. I mean, we have early 4090 prototypes from EVGA that had a default TDP of 600 watts. So we know they were considering doing 600 watts, and then they didn't. And then they're like, well, here's this $200 cooler on the 4080 for absolutely no reason.
Yeah. Yeah, and the 4080 one, that's in my system right now, unfortunately, but geez.
It's very quiet.
It is very quiet. I like that part, but I wouldn't want to pay for it either. Like, I would completely agree with you there. I think people just want price to performance as much as possible. I mean, people prefer not to have a blower cooler because they're generally louder.
Sure. And you can probably make a cheap dual fan anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I have an awful looking 1070 that just has like 2 fans strapped on the side of the PCB. It ran super quiet still. It's like, what? That's like 160, 200 watt card sometimes.
I don't even think it's one. I don't even think it's 200. I think the 1080 may have been 180. So I think it's, I
might be 140.
It's really low. Yeah. Because I think the 1060 was 120, 130. If only we had access to all knowledge at the fingertips and we could just look it up. But
not the internet.
Ever feel like a dog chasing its tail as you scour dozens of eBay postings and CD websites looking for a safe way to get reasonably priced Microsoft software? Well, you don't have to do that. Just go to cdkeyoffer.com. This piece of content is sponsored by cdkeyoffer.com that offers both Microsoft operating systems, Office products, select games, and even some gaming hardware peripherals for reasonable prices. And, they've been a sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead and the entire team here for years for a reason. They've been good to me. They've been good to Dan. They've been good to dozens of me and Dan's family members and friends for years now. And they've also been good to the Moore's Law is Dead community. So whether you're looking for Steam, EA, Uplay, or PlayStation keys, or of course Microsoft products or gaming peripherals, support Moore's Law is Dead by using the offer code BrokenSilicon for 25% off all Microsoft products and Die Shrink for 3% off everything else on the website. Support Moore's Law is Dead by supporting one of our best long-term sponsors, cdkeyoffer.com today. All right, well, let me shift the conversation this way then. You actually brought it up to me offline before we started recording. You weren't sure if I wanted to talk about Intel or something. But like in general on the CPU side, how do you see Intel versus AMD competition right now?
Dude, I did a poll. I asked people in my audience. I just asked, if you're buying a new CPU, what are you buying? AMD, Intel. It was like 75% AMD, like 15% Intel, and then the other 10% were no vote. I've been on AMD since Ryzen first got introduced. I got a 1600. I don't know why you would get Intel right now, because it's so, it's higher power, less motherboard cycles. More motherboard cycles actually on their part. And you could just get a 7800X 3D and get the same performance for like 80 watts as a 13900K or whatever. I don't know, at least on the gaming side, I don't know why you get them. And then on the production side, a 7950X on AMD, even a 5950X is still up there in the charts. And it's competing right up against them. It's like, oh, if you want production, you can just go to AMD too. It still draws less power. Not a ton less at that point, but it's just like, I don't see a reason to get it, especially with motherboard upgrades and stuff. So I do see some potential with Meteor Lake, just with their architecture now, where they're going to tile-based stuff. I feel like they're going to have a lot of problems that AMD's had with Infinity Fabric and all that, but there's potential. It doesn't look that good right now, though. But yeah.
It seems, and I know what you mean. Like, I think everyone always acted like, well, Intel is always the standard. Everyone knows Intel, but and that in some circles, it's of course still true. But I gotta say, when I talk to people at like HP or Dell, like they, especially, well, actually, I shouldn't group those together. That Dell is a much closer relationship to Intel. Take that back. When I talk to people at like HP or Lenovo, especially like someone at Lenovo or someone at Asus, they'll say, if we have a decent Ryzen laptop, that thing just sells. Like people are especially if it's the latest Ryzen, like Phoenix or now Hawkpoint, I suppose. Like people we can't keep the dang thing in stock. And so I think people talk about Intel mindshare, but in do it yourself, I mean, I've seen polls like what you said as well, where like in do it yourself, I mean, people, I think it's flipped from where it was 10 years ago. People buy AMD and maybe they check Intel sometimes. Like they just sort by price AMD
it depends
now.
Price pretty much. But right now I wouldn't even go Intel because it's the last generation on these boards. So
like how good do you think Arrow Lake needs to be though? Because let's just put it in the middle. Let's just say Zen 5's 20% better than what they have now. It's so add 20% at every tier. There'll be a say 9800X 3D that is 20% better than what's already winning gaming charts. Like how good do you think Arrow Lake actually needs to be, which I think might not launch until the very end of this year, by the way, if it does launch this year, to really beat it? Because I think a lot of people act like if it wins by 5 or 10%, that's all it needs to do. And I don't think so anymore.
I'm not even sure if it's just about winning performance. Because I think a lot of people are starting to care about the wattage on Intel CPUs because cooling them is a pain. That adds to your money and your cooler. And also just like what kind of system, like case you need to enclose this. If you need to upgrade your power supply, because like 7800X3 is like 80 watts, dude, I can put like a 600 watt graphics card in here with an 850 watt power supply. That'd still be fine. But I wouldn't be able to do the same on Intel. So I think their power efficiency, I guess, you can't undervolt it and stuff like that. Will they do that? I don't know, because I think they want every drop of performance they can get right now. I'm not even sure if, like, I think they would need to beat them by like a very significant margin in gaming, at least to
So
sell.
over 10%, is that
I
significant?
think over
to you?
10. I think to make it like, oh, people are paying attention to Intel again. 15, 20.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got to be like hands down. I don't think they're getting that right now, but I could be surprised.
Because if we think Zen 5 could be 20% better than Zen 4, that would mean Intel would have to be 40% better than where they are now. That's quite a tall order to do in a generation.
Yeah, I mean, it is a big generational leap, like architecturally. I don't think they're getting that much, though. I think they're going to have a lot of like, this is the first time they're going tile-based.
On desktop.
Yeah, on desktop. And I think they're going to have kinks, especially with first gen. Maybe next gen. I don't see them getting 40% in this generation. Maybe even 50. I mean, AMD doesn't do that. So,
I know.
And they've been scrappy for a little while. Now they're starting to slow down a little bit, but yeah. I mean, 5000 series on their part was pretty close to that. That was pretty big. But,
so, and I think people forget this. Like, if you go look up I don't know. Yeah, let's like the 9900K versus the 2700X. Let's not even bring up Zen 2.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, that was like 20% better than the 2700X in gaming. And the 2700X sold fine. I mean, AMD was still taking market share. And the fact is AMD just sold it for half the price. And I think a lot of people don't understand, like, AMD's margins right now are like great. And if they can sell just put things in perspective, the 7900 XTX has 300 millimeter squared to 5 nanometer silicon. And what is it, like 210 millimeters squared or something? I don't know. Not quite as much of that as in 6 nanometer. Okay. Zen 4 has 270 millimeter squared dies and 120. I mean, we're talking about less than half the silicon, and it was selling for almost the same price. Like, not really, but
yeah, that's
2/3 the price for less than half the silicon, and they don't include a cooler. The box this big costs them $1 to ship compared to like $10. I mean, if anyone doesn't think they could be selling that thing for $400, I mean, just compare it to the 7800 XT that is 200. It's still like 50% more silicon and a giant cooler. They have a board they have to put on it, and that's selling for the same price.
Yeah,
as a 7950X. So that's what I don't think people get is right now. Like, if Intel was 20% better, AMD, boom, now it's $400.
AMD could probably still drop some prices if they want to.
Mm-hmm. That's my biggest concern with Air Lake.
I honestly think I'm not even sure if I wonder how it's going to go. I'm wondering if AMD is going to be pressured to like really even go out this generation. They might wait and let Intel compete a little bit, see what happens, because I think mind share is definitely leaning towards AMD right now. Especially like you brought up the 2700X or 2700X, and I remember back then, like, it was just like, at least to me, I got the 1600 because I was like, well, you can get 6 cores, 12 threads for $200. I was like, yo, that's a good deal.
Just 1 year before that, I was considering if I should get Skylake or Broadwell and pay like $450 for 6 cores.
Yeah.
Just 1 year before that.
I don't know. Like that was huge. And now Intel is gonna, I wonder if Intel could be aggressive on their pricing. I think Intel's margins are probably a little higher because a little lower because they have to make like a full die right now, whereas AMD is doing the CCDs. I'm wondering if they can get their margins down a little bit with the tile-based stuff, or increase their margins, and then maybe they could cut prices. That's what I mean.
Maybe, but I believe
they will.
Their packaging doesn't look cheap to me. I mean, that's another thing to point out. Like, look at Meteor Lake with like, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dies or something, and they're all so tightly close together. It looks really cool. It looks cool at a minimum. Yeah. And then you look at AMD, and it's just the same crap since Zen 2. It's just, here's an IO die. They're not even that close to each other. Like Intel, it looks like they're literally tiles, like laid next to each other. They fit perfectly. That can't be cheaper to make than AMD just throwing 3 dies together. They've been doing for 5 years now or something.
They're
whatever
probably
it's
pretty
been.
good at it now. Yeah.
So that's my concern as well with that. And also, I mean, I think the top Arrow Lake chips are going to use TSMC 3 nanometer. So it will, like, this is apples to apples. This will cost more than AMD using 4 nanometer. Like, so we just know it will cost more to make. So that's where you go, well, if it's going to cost more to make, well, it better be better.
It better be a lot better.
It's funny how much you bring up that power consumption thing too, because I think that's a major, everyone brings up the gaming performance of the 7800X 3D. I think another thing is the fact that that doesn't need a big cooler. Like, you can use any cheap cooler with that and get the best gaming performance. I think that's half of it.
Dude, I've been running this on it.
Yeah.
It's running 60 degrees. When I'm gaming on it, it's like, I think that is a big deal for a lot of people, because honestly, there's certain scenarios where you might get CPU limited, but these chips are so fast that you need a pretty fast card to go around with it. And I mean, if you're talking about 7800X3, I mean, that's only when it's, you know, at lower prices, it's $350.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that you're reasonably pairing that with, like, I don't know, $500, $600 card, and
yet it's the best on the market.
Fast enough. Yeah, it's like, why? Like, you want that power consumption stuff, and I mean, like, the argument for Intel would be it can game as fast as a 7800X3, but also do production. So if you want to use multi-purpose on your system, I think that's a little bit more niche, maybe better for workstation users at that point.
Well, and how often do you need 16? I have a 5950X, you know, from Zen 3. And I certainly enjoy, because, like, I have 3, I'll be like podcasting with you, recording on a second stream over here. I've got 30 tabs open on Chrome over here. It is nice to always know that I'm never hitting 100% usage. But I don't think most people do that, and I probably don't need 16 cores anyways. I think a lot of these tests we do where we're testing multi-threading performance, I mean, you'd probably be using the GPU to render that anyways. They're just doing this for like testing purposes half the time.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much, yeah. A lot of people render out a video on their CPU, and it's like, when's the last time somebody rendered out a video on their CPU? Like, come on, let's be real. GPUs are so much faster. It's like,
and if you are going to do that
a quarter of the time,
and you're making money off of it, well, then go buy Threadripper. Like, what are we talking about here? You're not considering any of these probably to do that usually.
I mean, that's almost why. I mean, well, I think AMD made the wrong direction when they cut the Threadripper and they did the 16 cores. I feel like I see why they upped their price on their 16 core parts so much, because it's a very niche set of people who are actually buying them. And the argument for Intel, like, at least for me, like, a lot of people might want a 13900K for production. I was using my 5800X 3D. I was perfectly fine. I couldn't tell. I swapped to my 5900X, and it's a little bit better.
A test I want to do is, I've got a 5600X 3D back there that I want to get around to at some point, putting in my system and going from 16 to 6 cores. Do I even actually notice during a work day? Like, do I really notice? I probably will, but I kind of want to prove that I would.
I could tell a little bit between 8 and 12.
Okay.
So I think you would tell. Did you rush to Micro Center and get that?
I actually had a contact of me get 2, one for me and one for Steve at Hardware and Box. So cool. That review, you need to know, is Moore's Law says fingerprints on it, but because they don't have that in Australia.
Micro Center, and they did have one. Yeah, Steve was unfortunate there, because he was like, I just want to test this, but he has to work hard for stuff.
The problem too with that one was, like, I never know what customs is going to do. So me and my guy shipped it out, and then it got to Australia in like 3 days somehow, and just sat there in customs. But it sucks, you know?
Yeah. That was an interesting chip too.
But you talking about, like, what Intel has to do, I think there's no way around it. I think half of it has to be power consumption this gen for Intel. Like, I don't know if they realize it though, because they keep the i9-14900KS is about to come out. It is not going to use less energy. Like, I've heard insane things about it, like what they're doing. Oh yeah, 400. I've heard that they may market it for deleting or something. Like no one wants to do this, dude. Like no one wants to be
selling it to.
No one. No one. That's who. Check Amazon bestsellers. But I can't help but go with Arrow Lake. I wonder, like, if they can do a 10% win but match Zen 5's power consumption, that is what they need to do more than a 20% win with 400 watts of power consumption. I think this needs to be a gen where they stop doing that and understand that. I think people are okay with like 150, 200 watt CPUs at the top, but
Yeah,
that's the cutoff.
Yeah, that's when you can reasonably cool it. I mean, coolers have gotten cheap.
And a lot better.
Yeah, I have the Thermalright, what is it? Peerless Assassin. That it is like the dual tower one. It is only $35, and it runs great. Really whisper quiet, but I run that on the 5900X. It runs great. I do agree. Like 200 watts, I think that's starting to get. That's where also I feel like for the actual CPU die that they're almost not big enough to cool them effectively. Because I feel like that's one of the main issues with the 13900K or something, is that you just can't. Those Intel chips are even smaller than the AMD ones, or at least they're what is that called, the IHS. That if they're gonna do that, then they better make the IHS bigger and allow you to cool it. Because but really, when you think about it, who wants to buy a 360 millimeter AIO for their system? I mean,
it's just exactly, it's not that some people won't. It's not that some people can't. Plenty of cases fit them now, sure. But,
yeah.
I actually had a 280 millimeter all-in-one for a bit there. And I have this like compact case, and I had to like flex the case's panel to fit it. Like it literally is flush with the bottom of my case. And that was fun. It's completely unneeded. But to fit the 4090 in there now, I switched to a 92 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler, and it was a lot easier to screw it in. It was like I didn't have to like worry I was going to break the PC trying. Like it is so much easier to just put a simple cooler and call it a day. And I think that's what 90% of the market wants.
Yeah, people want easy stuff, and they drop it in. It works. You're getting good value. Yeah, I think they do need to focus on power consumption like huge. This one, even if it was around the same performance, because I even kind of think this is how Nvidia is doing it too. But like if Intel took a generation to really focus on power consumption, bring it down with around the same performance, I think people would be a lot happier. And if they could, another big thing is people want to be able to upgrade their stuff at some point in the future. And dropping upgrades on AMD. I don't know if AM5 is going to be the same way, but AM4.
Oh, I think it's going to at least Zen 6 from what I hear. So I don't think there's any worries there.
Okay.
With AM5.
Yeah, I mean, people want that too. People want to buy something and they don't get to upgrade their entire system again. Because when you think about someone too, the average person buys a pre-built. You know what I mean? There is like, we would both build computers. Most people are probably watching this would build computers. But a lot of people just buy them pre-built and they're like, oh, I got to buy a whole new computer. But you could just, pay a friend that knows how to do it, drop in a CPU with AMD, and people want that. It's a lot cheaper. So,
I've said this, like I had a 6700K when Zen came out, and then I waited until Zen 2. I spoiled myself because I just couldn't believe like we were on 16 cores already. And I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm rewarding them. I'm buying the first 16 core. It's happening. Yeah. And that's when I upgraded. But I've always said, if Intel, which I believe the LGA pins were the same, they could have done it. If I could have upgraded my 6700K to a 9900K, I would have. I would have done that if they let me. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't have had to have gotten a new motherboard, reinstalled. I wouldn't do anything. I would have, and that would have. I'd probably still be using it to this day. It's still strong enough. I mean, but instead, what they've done is they forced me to make a decision. I chose the one that was cheaper with a longer living platform. I didn't need to, but I was able to get a couple of years ago a 5950X for like $450. I'm like, I can sell my old one for $300. Now AMD's actually gotten 2 purchases out of me when they would have gotten 0 if Intel didn't make you upgrade motherboards.
What's interesting too is how much does the chip maker actually make off of like motherboard upgrades? Because you kind of think that they have like a monetary benefit if you upgrade your motherboard.
Intel does. They make a lot of the chipsets for them.
Oh, okay. So they do make,
but that's kind of like a monopoly argument. It's like, well,
yeah,
we control the market, so let's make them buy a motherboard too. But
yeah,
that doesn't work anymore.
yeah, because AMD's competitive. So
And that was true with I think it was X570. Like they literally used the IO die from Zen 3 for the chipset or something, or I think it was the IO die from Zen 2, which is the same IO die, I guess. But for the chipset, like they were literally using the IO die worked as the chipset for the motherboard. So AMD was double dipping there, but they're not anymore. Now they just let other people make it. So even AMD's gone, we don't need a double dip, which is interesting.
yeah, because people just buying their CPUs. I mean, Intel also makes I know they make the network chips a lot of the times too. Maybe they'll make multiple things on their boards, but it's just like, I don't want to upgrade it all the time. That costs a lot. So,
no, well, and it's not like swapping out a graphics card. It really is a headache. I'll probably have to reinstall Windows, or I should, and you know, or
I don't, but don't tell people that.
I have done that before, and it actually worked okay.
Yeah, it works. Like usually, if you uninstall your old drivers, and it's usually all right. But
so let me shift the conversation here then. Just in general, how do you see the health of the PC gaming market right now? Just CPU, GPU, how does it feel? You know, for me, I have a lot to say a lot of the time because I've been doing this for a very long time. But like, how do you see it now versus even like 10 years ago or something?
Well, okay. I'll be honest, about 10 years ago, that's when I built my first PC. Around in there, I had like if you want to reference where I started, I had like an i5 2500 GTX 770 with 8 gigs of RAM. I built it for like $350. But if I compare it to then, I mean, I remember the glory days of graphics cards when it was like 2016. It was like, holy, this is amazing. This is great. Both parties putting out great cards, and there wasn't much to complain about on GPUs. Nowadays, on GPU side of things, I think it's there's some good deals. But I really, like I said earlier, I really don't like that there isn't that good entry point for people to jump in. Like $200 to $300 is not that competitive. For most people, I don't think there's that much to get excited about unless you're going to spend a lot. And I have had a lot of friends that have now upgraded to a higher tier card than they would have before, because that's where the competition is. That's what people are talking about, which is exactly what Nvidia, AMD, that's what they want you to do. I wish there was more competition down below. And I also really don't like that we have a 4090 that's $1,600, or now it's more than that. And
it's $2,000 basically.
Yeah, and that's a
and
good
I bet
card.
the 5090 is going to be $2,000 as well. So I just think that's where the tier is going to be.
Yeah, they're probably going to push it even higher. But like that's like a good card. I made a video about this. Is like, why are we celebrating a 4090? Like, what, we shouldn't want to push that high. Like that's an entire PC. That's like 2 PCs for a lot of people. It's just the graphics card. It's like, we don't want this. I was okay. Like I know like Nvidia experimented with that really high end with the 3090, but that was only marginally better than a 3080, really. And I was more okay with it then. But they're like, oh, we can charge that much. Let's do it. And yeah, I don't like that the mid range is like $500 now, or the entry point feels like it should be $500 where the competition is. Usually there's a ton of competition at entry level.
Well, the entry level, just so you know, like 15 years ago, like again, for some reason I brought it up a dozen times now, the 6670. That was a card that back in like 2011, 720p back then was kind of what 1080p is now. 1080p then is actually kind of viewed as better than 1440p is now, I would say. And the 6670 could do 720p high settings, 60 frames, and it was $70. So the entry level back then was not. That was about $70. So from my perspective, the one thing I will push back a little bit on is it's like people say entry level was $150. It was $70 when I was. It was like, so this has been a trend that has really been 20 years in the making, is what I would say too. And I think entry now is like, the entry level cards are so much nicer than they used to be though. But it's like $200.
Yeah, 200.
That's entry, not low end.
I wouldn't want to buy anything lower than a 6600. Or A750. I still wouldn't recommend A750 to people. Although I'm gonna retest them pretty soon, see how that goes. But yeah, that's the most disappointing. Is like every like this entry point has been shifting up. I mean, part of like $70. I wonder what that works out to inflation now, because we've had increased inflation.
My guess is like 110 since then, but I'm gonna look it up. Let's see.
Wow, 110. That's crazy, actually. So they are nicer, but I'm not sure if they're that much nicer now.
So no, I know what you mean. 70. Well, let me type it. Oh.
I remember I was thinking about getting like a GTX 1050 Ti back then. I mean, those were pretty solid cards too.
The government claims it would be $95 now, but I'm sure some.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a time where entry level cards were like $100. Granted, the 6670 launched for $100. That was like a year or two after it came out, but it was still there. Even then, like 120 was decent. Like your HD 7770 is, your 750 Ti's. Well, those are really like 150 or more. So again, the trend really was consistently going up, I'd say, for 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, they want to improve their margins. I guess it doesn't surprise me, but
So on the GPU side, though, it seems like you're a bit depressed. Although if you're an enthusiast gamer, it's actually never been better. But you have to be an enthusiast gamer. On the CPU, though, wouldn't you argue it is better than before in many ways?
I agree. I mean, AMD's put in a lot of competition on the CPU side and really showed Intel's stagnation there. But like, still, Intel's competitive right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's still an option, or the option that I would choose, or most people would choose, probably not. But I mean,
it's not like Bulldozer versus Haswell, or should I say Pile Driver. By the time Haswell came out, it's getting hard to recommend AMD for anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking when I got my 1600, at least from then. I mean, I had that in my PC until like midway 2022 or something, and man, other stuff is so much faster now, and it hasn't gone up that much in price, if at all. Actually, I'm not sure. Like 5600Xs are still really cheap. 7600s, that's still 200. I mean,
and sometimes they'll like at Micro Center come with free RAM or something silly.
They're just giving everything away. I mean, I like the CPU side, and I'm just thinking about, like, I guess the motherboard side is a little more iffy, but also,
they're higher quality. My God, they are
higher quality. But before. Like, I can't even complain a whole lot about that. I think I got a X570 board here, and it's MSI one, and I got it for $180.
Mm-hmm.
It's got 3 PCIe slots that both run at X4, and it's got all the fast USB stuff. It's got 3 NVMe slots. It's like, there's so much on it. It's like $180. Like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good right now. That's top tier board. It can overclock like crazy too. So,
also, I don't know if you remember, it was probably getting a little better when you got into it, but like power supplies, I remember when I got into it in like 2012, it was like over $100 for like a freaking 750 watt power supply. And it was garbage, and they would advertise there's more than 2 8-pins on it. So more than 2. Like there were power supplies advertising themselves as SLI ready that were 650 watts because they had 2 6-pins, and that was like $80. Like
that's
in 2012.
Like a scam.
Yeah, compared to now, that is the one thing I will point out to people is
power supplies are pretty nice.
Mining did make power supplies better because they had to be so much higher quality, and then they made too many power supplies, and they're still trying to get rid of these things that were really meant to power mining rigs.
Yeah, there's still like the power supplies are still like decently expensive, I'd say, but yeah, they're nice. Like I'm not worried about a power supply. In fact, when I bought my first one, like 2016, I bought like a 550 watt Roswell one, which aren't very highly recommended at all. I bought it for like
that was like the minimum
bucks.
You'd go. I remember liking Roswell for like budget builds, because anything below that is going to be like, oh God, what was it? Max. There were some like truly terrible ones.
Yeah, and it's like, I didn't have much money. I was just a kid, but at least power supplies, you can buy it, and it's like, it has 10-year warranty, and it's just like, okay, that's pretty good. And they're like, most of the decent ones that I would recommend buying are like $70-$80 and they're gold rated.
Mm-hmm.
750 to
It was a big deal
watts.
if it was 80 plus at all, like not even just gold. Like in 2012, it was like, ooh, it's 80 plus, not even bronze. That was ooh, for under $100. Whoa.
Yeah, the efficiency of your power supply is like a space heater.
Yeah. QH Freddy
like
writes
50 watts and it's just like half it. All right.
No, yeah. QH Freddy writes in and he goes, what do you think the impact is of people being burned out on games or feeling that there are not many new games worth playing, or the opposite, people being excited about new games on GPU sales? Where would you say we are now in terms of games driving or slowing down GPU sales? And I'll just jump in and say I don't really see games driving GPU. Any big release on PC is going to drive some people to upgrade no matter what.
Yeah.
But it's not like it used to be at all. I think in terms of like, oh, I got to make sure I can run this game.
Yeah, I think Starfield recently was that game that was supposed to be like, and then the game was just bad. So, honestly, at least my view on the PC gaming, like the games that are coming out, dude, there's too many games right now. They're too good. I'm not gonna lie. I've been really interested in a ton of stuff lately. I don't have the time to play them.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I agree. My backlog is like, I mean, I'm trying to I closed Steam before we start recording, but like my Steam backlog, I've got like multiple Doom games, and I don't even like, and then even just like on console, like I don't know, I was like drunk one night and bought like the Spider-Man collection. I still haven't played it. Like I think there's all, and now it's on PC too. By the way, I could have just gotten it on PC. I think there's too many games to play, and I think I just thought of this now too when you brought up Starfield. I think Cyberpunk and Starfield were the last games to like make people want to upgrade, but neither of them worked for the first 6 months they were out. So there's almost this thing happening where it's like, why would you upgrade your PC to play the newest release? What you should do is wait until the next generation when the game works, and then upgrade your PC.
Let them bug fix it for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if we'll see it again where I just feel like AAA has been taking like a downturn in terms of, and those are the games that are really graphically demanding that you would want to upgrade. But like Starfield, Cyberpunk's good now, and I probably will play through it at some point. I still haven't, but I played through a little bit. It's great right now. And I don't think we're gonna see that as much now because like usually the AA games are doing so much better, or indie games. I mean, we look at like I've played some Power World. That game's super easy to run. It runs like Fortnite, and I'm trying to think.
There's Helldivers too, which I think is harder to. I think it's hard. I'm sure it's harder to run than Power World, but it's not a game anyone was upgrading to play. You know, like, and you can run it on most things reasonably. I don't think it's the most optimized game, but it looks reasonable for what it is. And I think
the game looks really good, at least from watching videos on my phone. But yeah, I mean, Helldivers 2 is pretty easy to run. I was playing Baldur's Gate 3. That's an easy game to run. I can't even think of all the games I'm playing. I've played some Overwatch 2. That game's easy. I don't think there's that many games you'd want to upgrade to, but I do think the gaming market like is still fun right now. And that doesn't mean that you have to upgrade your card. I'd say the only reason you'd really want to upgrade your card, well, one, if it's really slow, but two, like if you're upping resolution or something like that. It's like, a lot of people do want to try 1440p or 4K now. Get a new card for that, but that's not a huge drive either, I don't think. So
Woody Chang writes in and he says, what, if any, changes in the gaming industry do you anticipate as a result of the ongoing layoffs? I can think of some possible consequences, such as an increase in indie devs or larger studios taking less risks with more sequels. But are there consequences that you see that people aren't talking about? You know, and I want to bring up something that I was asked on the live stream I did a few days ago, because someone who wrote in a question ahead of time, I thought had a really good point, and they brought up that Sony has been openly saying they've been trying to have a big online multiplayer hit for years that they can't succeed at. And they've even The Last of Us, they were making a factions game they canceled, and it's like, how much money did they waste trying to make this online game? Helldivers 2 succeeded. This was not by a AAA dev. And have they stumbled into this? And do these publishers need to reevaluate where they're spending their money? And then I was like, Minecraft and Helldivers 2 and PUBG, half of these online sensations are not coming from AAA studios. And if you're a publisher, you should be spending your money on making sure Naughty Dog makes the next Uncharted and doesn't waste their money trying to make an online game, and then just fund a bunch of AA and indie devs to make the online games.
Yeah, give them a shot. You know what I mean? They cost a lot less too.
And so that's where I think these layoffs could lead to something actually good, which is, I mean, we're talking about layoffs at some of these studios. Well, Naughty Dog should have. No, I'm sorry. If you were laid off, I'm sorry, but they just spent 3 years making nothing. If I was in charge, I'd say layoffs now because you don't need more people.
I mean, what was the...
Maybe they'll make AA studios now with the people who left those companies.
True. There has been some games that have come out from like Battlefield devs. I forget what game that was. That did pretty well, but I can't remember what it is now. But there's been studios who tried a game recently that just like flopped. Suicide Squad.
Oh, I think that's one of them. Yeah.
Like,
there was the other one too with like jetpacks. I'm forgetting what that was. It was like a big EA game though. It's from BioWare, I think.
Oh, Anthem?
That was another one. That was this big online game. No, you should have been making another RPG, not making another online game.
Like, use all the money. Like, the publisher should probably use all the money they made from those games to go find talent that makes those type of games. And then, honestly, like Helldivers, just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
and so that's my answer to Woody Chang is I think, I hope I'm looking at this glass half full. An unintended good consequence of this is the people laid off at Naughty Dog who are wasting their time making factions at a studio that shouldn't be making factions. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'll go make an online survival game that's good and doesn't take $200 million to make.
I mean, it sucks to say. I do feel for people who are hired and then fired. Also, I mean, honestly, it's the fault of the publisher. And I wonder if if people are that serious about it, then maybe there could be lawsuits. I don't know, but I'm not sure how that would go.
That one specifically is a weird one for me because they had an online component to the previous, of course, Last of Us that was very popular for what it was. It was considered tacked on, and yet it had a pretty cult following. I still find it so bizarre they didn't say, okay, well, we're canceling factions, but a remaster of Last of Us 2 just came out. Add the online you made, though, to that. People will buy it. And they decided not to. So I wonder how away from them it got in scope to where they couldn't even tack it on to a remaster. Yeah. It's so weird to me.
I'm wondering if those devs could even do something like that. Because, I mean, there's a game like Rust. I could see that in the universe of Last of Us. So I don't think they were that far-fetched from it.
No, me neither. So so we'll know. Someone's going to go and get interviewed in the next 5 years and tell us what went wrong. And I'm going to be curious about this.
What did they mess up in development? I mean, there's some studios that just can't do it. I really look at the Suicide Squad game. It's just like Rocksteady was not meant to make that game. And no one was passionate about it. You just see it as just cold. It's dry, the game. And I think a lot of the top developers or the managers or whatever, CEOs, I think even the CEO might have stepped down. Like, they just left because they were being forced to make a game they didn't want to make. And I think a lot of the AAA studios or the publishers are just going to be looking at this, hey, we're losing a lot of money. We got to do something else. This is the breaking point. So they want a big breakout hit like Fortnite, but I'm not sure if they're going to get that.
Well, yeah, honestly, but
I don't think there's enough room for it anyways.
I don't think you can plan for it to be that good. It's like really me or you making a YouTube video. I generally know which ones will be on the upper end and which ones will be on the lower end, but I never know which of the upper end ones are going to go like nuts. Like one of the most popular piece of content on my channel with over 1 million views right now is a conversation with Tech Yes City. No clue that was going to be so popular and people were just going to keep clicking on it for years. I've re-listened to it though. It's pretty good. I'm like, okay, I don't know. Something about how this landed maybe it had the right keywords in the title too with the names. I don't know. But it's you can't plan for that. So stop spending all this money on trying. Do we? Some of these studios I've heard, like Assassin's Creed teams, are like 1,000 people. It's like, do we need 1,000 people working on The Last of Us times The Last of Us kart racing or something? Or or do we need 500 people making one new game that's going to be good, and the other 500 could be 3 different teams making smaller games, and if one of them fails, at least it wasn't The Last of Us kart racing and it costs a lot less to make.
Yeah. I mean, I think they should experiment a lot more. I think we're seeing that too. I think I saw a list of like how many studios PlayStation is working with. Is like, it's insane. So it wouldn't surprise me if they are trying that. Maybe they even see a project through and like, we don't really like it. Maybe they don't release it to the public. But I think they are starting to. They're definitely going to be trying it now because they've lost a lot of money on stuff. I mean, maybe you look at studio like Square Enix with Forspoken. They acted like that game didn't exist. So
that's another one of those. It's like the single player version of Anthem or something. It's just like they were like, this is the next built by committee boring. Like, it's not the worst thing you've ever seen, but it's like just why would you play boring. It though?
Yeah. I think of it too with like Overwatch 2. I mean, they ended up going monetization route basically with Overwatch 2, but they could have had an amazing game. Like, if you think about Helldivers, Overwatch 2 could have been Helldivers. Like, that's how they're structuring the game. You drop in, you do a mission, and then you upgrade your gear throughout the thing and keep going. You go on co-op with your friends with the universe of Overwatch. Could have been amazing. Something went wrong in development, and they just canceled it. But I think Blizzard learns from that too. They're like, I don't know if Blizzard would be a company to pick up smaller studios or something like that, though. They're a little bit too prideful. But like, if the big publishers, the big AAA ones, yeah, I think they should start experimenting. Xbox is doing that a lot now too. They haven't had that much success, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I think I might want to leave it there. I think that was a pretty interesting conversation to end on. But unless there's any other subjects you want to bring up right now that you want to discuss, because I'm certainly free to discuss anything you thought we would talk about that you really want to get to quick.
I just wanted to ask, like, what games have you been playing?
What games have I been playing? Well, Helldivers 2. I don't know. I actually have been playing The Last of Us 2 remastered. I didn't expect to, but I like paid the $10 upgrade fee or something. And I just got hooked on No Return. I mean, it made me real. Like, I just love the combat system. So I just got stuck in this loop of like upgrading characters, trying to unlock the new ones. But I'm mostly through that. And otherwise, I play a lot of like Battlefield. I'm kind of like weaning off of Battlefield right now. I mean, it got good, but I'm like, I don't know. It's not pulling me in. I play a lot of Age of Empires and Helldivers 2 right now. That's what I would say. Okay. I've always loved Age of Empires.
Good stuff. I actually never, like, I started playing Last of Us Part 1 on PC. There's no online component. Is that the online part of Last of Us 2?
No, they don't. No Return is a roguelike randomized. So like, and you can play as other characters. You play as Joel, Ellie, 10 other people.
It's a completely different game.
Right. So what they do is they take arenas from the game and then different factions, like Seraphites, like all these things. Like, there's like 4 different factions that could appear there. And it's just, now you're in the hotel, but it's this faction and you need to survive 5 minutes. If you die, you have to start over, and there's 6 different stages, and they've made bosses at the end. And so if you die, you have to start all over. But one roguelike run is like 30 minutes total. So it's not a big loss.
Yeah. That's actually really cool. I didn't even know that existed.
I wish they'd add co-op. That would be I'm nuts. Like, what are you doing? Add co-op to this. Let us randomized encounters and try to survive with your friends. What are you doing?
I love
you canceled factions and it's sitting right in front of you. You've got a co-op game. You can just, what are you doing?
Come on. Man. Oh man, the potential. That
I
kind of
know.
sucks, actually.
They can still do it. Like if anyone there, and probably one of the people there is listening to this, like make the co-op roguelike game. There is your money maker. Why do we have to tell you this? Why can't you think of it yourself?
I'm even thinking. I'm a big Risk of Rain fan. I don't know if you've ever played that, but another roguelike. Those games they're just crazy. They're so much fun. It's just like every moment of it is just like decisions you have to make. A little bit of luck, a little bit of gambling. It's just what you need.
And so imagine there are these randomized things in a game where you like start with 3 bullets and you're with your friends and you're like, all right, I found this mine we can place here. I found this here. Oh, but we should conserve our ammo because the next mission's probably going to be a lot harder. So let's just with
the one friend just shoots everything.
Yes. Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I will be a lot more like in Helldivers 2, that one friend that just blows everyone up with an airstrike. It's like, maybe we're not playing with him again. Jesus.
Yeah, they're doing a little input on the command thing, and
like who called in the like artillery strike that's just going to sit here for 3 minutes and kill us? Thanks, dude.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good games. I really hope, like we saw that comment earlier, like I really hope that people don't feel like there's no good games right now. They're crazy. There's so much to play.
Well, one piece of advice I heard on another podcast that I would throw in here is if you don't feel like playing games right now, make sure you're actually trying them. Like if you only play on a Switch and you refuse to get a console or a PC, well, yeah, you're probably missing out on 80% of the game. So look at what the consoles, look what the PCs have. But if all of that still isn't appealing to you, just take a break and you'll come back in 6 months and find some game that's a blast. There's some years I play games more than others.
Oh, for sure. I got really into Overwatch too. And then at a certain point, I was like, "Oh, you have to spend so much time on this to be really good at this game." But I don't. Eventually, just get busy. But yeah, I've had phases too where it's just like playing games all the time, and then like right now with YouTube, I'm really busy on that. I'm sure you are too. And you can work something that's interesting about YouTube is you can work as much as you want to. At some point, you do need to call it.
I was gonna say that's where it becomes like. Doing it for a few years, you just learn, nope, I am going to stop working today or I'll kill myself.
Gotta live a little bit. So yeah, but like gaming is it's just a hobby. So if you're not liking it, then take a break. Simple as that. And hopefully you'll find either your love for it or maybe you don't like games anymore.
And maybe it's not always the games. Maybe you're just tired of playing games. Like, it's possible.
Yeah, because like how I think of games, they're great, but really they're just like to have some fun because real world, other than meeting friends and games, I mean, you're not doing that much in a game. You're just chilling out. So you shouldn't take it seriously, and you should just enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, find something else to do. And hopefully it's not because of the graphics cards.
No, hopefully not. But well, I think I'll end it there. If people want to find out other things they should do, they should go to your YouTube channel. There will be a link in the description, and also mine, and just watch every video 20 times and give us 100 likes.
Oh,
I can't think of, if you're bored of gaming, I can't think of a better thing to do than watch our videos on loop.
That'd be awesome.
But I don't know. I know you have a YouTube channel. Was there anything else you wanted to plug as well?
Pretty much on social media, I'm pretty much just YouTube. I do have I don't think I'd plug it here, but you can find some stuff through my YouTube channel if you want. Check out some videos.
Well, again, then, thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you, of course, for coming on, Vex. And,
thanks for having me.
Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell button, check us out on Patreon, ask us questions. There's bonus content there. Download the podcast, subscribe there, give us a review on Apple Podcasts, and so on and so forth. But otherwise, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and have a good week, everybody.
Yeah. Peace.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carbon Cry and Kerry No Sugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page in the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Kerry No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guests questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels:
Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z Chits, Daniel D, Aaron Close, Jan Rano, Daniel High, GZ Ziggy, Brian Riggleman, MJB1, Deke, Nicholas Buckner, SNES Chalmers, Jerem Ferrier, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, HardForum.com, Gregory Sacker, Andrew S, Sarcastro, Evan Dingle, Chris Rich, Chris Press, Earthplex, 3DS8, Halbuma, Greg Wanchek, Shredberg, Dr. Foreman, Benjamin Cannon, Jonathan, Olden Mobley, Blake, Franco Frederic, Sammy Malas, Jake223, Jake Martin, Jordan Simkovic, Slicky, Julian Leak, The Boz Haas, Stefan Hart, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Travis Gooding, Stefan, Toka, Mad, Zootsuit Taylor, Stephen Coates, Michael McGee, Greg, Patrick Crow, Amiable Chief, Chrysantine, Tommy, Mark Mitchell, I Should Rock Raidmaker, The Eternal Dreamers, James Anderson, Cole Addict, Judson N, Neithra Zink, Cameron, Wesley Sager, Henry Zhang, Michelle Pell, D31337 Antics, Hexa Puma, Reginald Ari, T. Cottom, Gaiman Since Reagan, Jeff Sedler, Loophole 35, JSMH, Windstar, James I. Raider, Corey Leonard, Little Germany, Shay, Milton, Pulse Media, Jamie Witters, Dave Schultz, Melodic Warrior, Mac Daffy, Stephen Dick, Chuck Clinton, Brett Jones, Austin Haggerty, Justin Bustle, I-701-700K, Joe Foot, Hardland, Earth Taurus, Slushpot, Jason Angima, Joseph Kelly, Samuel Park, Hemsa Gung, Tails 2299, Meal Val, Verga, John, Sisyphos, Dale Russell, The Forbidden Juice, Leakedman, Winwing, RB Racer, AC, Michael Cozy, Dr. J Mad, Alex Vega, Freedy, Brian Wright, John Swin, Angel of Cake, Jola Martina, Keekum, Albergun, Solarized 80, Matthew Marlowe, Raisin Biscuit, Jeff Johnson, Penta Winta, Rowan McHickey, Cornstir 671, Sprutnik, Jeffrey Linneman, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.